The Premiere Pro titler comes with several dozen styles. Styles are like templates for text. You make some text, apply a style to it, and it instantly changes how the text looks. And if you change some of the properties of that text, making it look different, you can then save that changed style as your own personal style that you can use later. I want to show you some styles as kind of a preparation for the next lesson on dealing with properties. So to follow along, go to Working Files, Projects, and open up 1604 Text Styles. We're going to work with a light blue background this time because some of these styles have drop shadows that are not black. They're like white or light red or something like that, and you wouldn't be able to see them on a black background. Let's make some new text by going down to the New Item button, clicking on that, clicking on Title. We're going to call this one Styles, and I want you to make a big word. Just click in here someplace, type in a word of your choice. I'm going to click on this style here to change that. This is the default style. It's the simplest style of them all. It just has a white solid fill is all. And now I want to change the size of this. I click on the selection tool, hover anywhere inside here, it turns into the bounding box, make it up here to the upper right, and then stretch it down here to the lower left, and we've got our big chunk of text so we can see the styles better. If you prefer working with the light blue background, just go up to this little button here and click on it to show you what's on the sequence, what's under the current time indicator. We're going to work with the transparent background, so I'm going to uncheck that and go back to that look there. With the text active like this with the bounding box around it, if you click on a new style, it immediately changes the appearance of the text, like that. How simple is that to have some kind of a starting point? You might want to select the style and go, okay, that's nice, but I'm going to change a couple of characteristics about it. There you go, that's how it works. You click on one of these guys, like this really big one, whoa, smaller one, all different kinds of styles. And then they sort of lend themselves to being like the starting point, the springboard to any kind of customization that you might want to do on them. If you click away from this so it's not active anymore, like out here, then if you change the style, it won't change this at all, but it does change the default style over here. So if I were to take the type tool now and just click over here and start typing new text, it would look like that style there. I'll undo that. If you just have your type tool somewhere in here, that too makes the bounding box active. So if you change it, it'll change all the text inside the bounding box, like so. If you select just one letter or some number of letters like that, if you make a change to it, it'll be just those letters that get changed, like so. I'll undo that. And if you make any changes to this, you can save it as a style, and I'm going to show you that at the end of this lesson. So what I want to do now is I want to show you one particular style, the one that I just kind of touched on a second ago, this one here. And I'm choosing this because it has several elements that kind of round out the whole collection of things that you can do in a style. I want to make this text smaller. I can go over here and shrink it down like that. This is the text I want to work on here, and I want to show you a few characteristics about it. And I want to go from top to bottom. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close down Transform here. You don't need to see sort of the location of the text. I'm going to close down these properties here. This is the font properties. So you don't need to worry about that. Now I want to work on these properties down here. Top one is fill, the inside of the text. How is it filled? In this case, it's filled as a 4-color gradient. And you may be going, I don't see 4 colors. I see 1 color there. But it's kind of clever how the Adobe designers set this up. If you look at the 4-color gradient, in the upper right-hand corner here, it's a little bit lighter yellow than the lower left-hand corner. It's just a nice little touch. And you can confirm that by clicking on this little color stop there and going to look at its color and seeing that the color is kind of light at the light end of yellow here. And its luma is 227, kind of bright. If I click on the lower left-hand corner and look at its color, you'll see that it's on the darker end here and its luma is 198. So it's a little bit darker. So it really is a 4-color gradient. They do have 4 different colors. It's just that they're subtly different. Very nice. You can have other kinds of fill. You can have a solid color fill, linear gradient, which is just 2 colors. A radial gradient, which is 2 colors as well, but it's circular. Bevel is kind of complicated. It's not like using the bevel edges or bevel alpha effect. It's kind of difficult to set up, so we're going to take a pass on this one when I discuss properties. And Eliminate and Ghost both require that you work with shadows. They too are a little complicated. So we're going to work on these 4 in the next lesson. We'll leave it at 4-color gradient now. The next element of the style is strokes. Strokes are outlines. There are no inner strokes. You can have strokes on the inside of the text. There are none here. You can see there are none here, so I'll just close this down. But there are 3 outer strokes, yellow one here, dark brown, and light brown. If you look over here, you might not see the yellow one, but it's right here, a little thin line there. And I'll show you how that works. I'll change the color so you can't miss it. I'll change it to blue, let's say. And there it is, that little thin line. Which again is just a really clever thing. If I go back to the previous one, You can just barely see how it just highlights the inside there. It's a little bit lighter than the rest of the color inside the text. The order of the strokes corresponds to how they're displayed. The uppermost stroke is on the inside, and the other strokes as they go down the list go out from that. Now you might notice that the dark brown stroke has some white on it. That's called sheen, and I'm going to explain how that works in just a moment. But before we go there, I want to go back and discuss some more details about the strokes. So I'm going to turn this inner stroke back into blue again. Change this one to like green so you can see it. And I'll change this one to red so you can see it too. Those are the three strokes. And there's a certain size to them, 12, 14, and 6. And you can change the size. And you also can have something besides a solid here. You can also have gradients for strokes, which is kind of nice. And you can have stroke types. Right now it's the edge. It just goes around the outside. But you can have depth. Looks like that. Gives it some 3D feel. Something called drop face, where actually the stroke kind of hides behind it. As you move the magnitude over, you begin to see it show up. There it goes, showing up now like that. I'm going to go back to the original colors. What I want to talk about now is sheen. That one right there has sheen on it, this dark brown one. And the sheen is kind of a bright area. This is the sheen area. It's white. You see it's a large sheen. I'm going to get closer to this text. I'm going to zoom in on it by really making this guy big there so you can get a chance to see that just a little bit better there. Looking at the T now, that little white area. I'm going to increase the size of the stroke so you get a chance to see how that works. So I'm going to make it larger here. And that's the sheen. The sheen is just this white thing. You can make it thinner, which is typically how you'd see it. But again, it works pretty effectively here, the way they set it up. Kind of a glow in the middle and then tapers off. You can also change the angle. Change the color. Well, the white's kind of the default color when you do sheen, but we'll mess with it. And the offset means how far above or below the center of the text do you put the sheen. I'm kind of running you through some of these things now just to kind of prepare you for doing this in more detail in the next lesson. All right, so that's the outer strokes. We have 3 of them, as you can see. I'll close them down. And then finally, we have a drop shadow. So let me just get this thing back down to a reasonable size here by dragging it this way. The drop shadow, you're probably going, what drop shadow? I'm used to seeing some kind of large shadow, but there's just a little edge to it. And again, that's just part of the text designer's idea. Very clever. It just gives it a little bit of depth. If I turn off the drop shadow, kind of watch how it looks. It looks kind of flat now. That drop shadow just gives it a little bit of depth. And you can see more of the drop shadow if you want to change the distance from it. It'll move it farther away. It doesn't have to be opaque like that. You can make it somewhat transparent. You can do what's called spreading, which means you kind of just soften the edge. We spread out the shadows when we worked on the adjustment layer to kind of highlight an area of adjustment layer. That's how you spread it out like that. And you can change the size from the default, which the default is equal to the size of the original object. If you make it larger, then there you go. It looks like that. And you can also change the color. And now that we've been messing with this poor thing and turned it into this less than appealing style, I want to show you how to save it, not necessarily for posterity here, but just to show you how to do it. So I click on the Title Styles panel menu here, and I go to New Style, and then it says Name the Style. So I'll call it Jeff's New Style. Click OK. And now that becomes this little option down here. So if I click away to something else, to that, for example, if I'm going, oh, I miss my style so much, I go back here and click on it. And notice how the little icon here shows it has a blue drop shadow and it has these sheens and all that kind of stuff. You can see it all there. It's kind of exaggerated in this little icon just to make sure you can tell what it looks like. In fact, the blue shadow doesn't go that far as it shows down here, but that's how these guys are set up, just to kind of further emphasize how these things are going to work. So that's how styles work. In the next lesson, you'll effectively create your own style when you take text that has no styles applied to it at all, and then start applying and adjusting properties.